All right, American democracy. We are in our last unit, which is criminal rights. Uh, Anytime you have an interaction with the police and the government in a criminal nature, so the police or government, they're accusing you of a crime or they want to charge you with a crime, you have certain constitutional protections, things in place to protect you to make sure the government doesn't treat you unfairly. And these are amendments in the Bill of Rights. And so there's about 4 or 5 amendments we're going to focus on. Today, in this video, we're going to focus specifically on the Fourth Amendment. Protection against illegal search and seizure. And so you see here a number of pictures dealing with the police searching you. It might be during a traffic stop, it might be in school, in an airport, drug sniffing dogs, or searching cars. So these are all examples of searches. And so we're really going to focus on when do the police have the right to search you and when maybe do they not have the right to search you. So the wording of the Fourth Amendment is pretty important and really focus on those yellow words. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. And so, again, vague language, like what exactly does unreasonable mean? And that's where courts come into play. You might think the cop was unreasonable, the judge may not agree. And so, again, a lot of these amendments are written with vague language, and that's where our courts have come in over time, and they've interpreted what all of this means. Again, the important thing to remember is all the amendments deal with the government. The government cannot search you unreasonably. Same thing like with the First Amendment we talked about, how the government cannot take away your freedom of speech. That's different than your job or a private business. We're focusing on the government doing these things to you. And so with search and seizures, basically there are 3 types of searches. Searching your home. Your home is the most protected thing that you have. The Third and Fourth Amendment. The Third Amendment deals with quartering of troops. The government cannot put soldiers in your home. The Fourth Amendment, again, not search your home illegally, creates this zone of privacy around your home. It's very hard for the government to be able to come in and search your home unless they've got probable cause and warrants. We'll get into that here in a little bit. Again, this all comes from when we were part of England. Think way back when we were part of of Great Britain. One of our biggest complaints against the British was that they would search people's homes at any time for any reason. People really had no protection. So once we split off from England and we wrote the Bill of Rights, we want to make sure this was a guaranteed protection from the government. The second type of search is your body for drugs. If they're going to do some type of drug test, now this could be if you get pulled over for a DUI, they might want to check your blood for a blood alcohol level. This also could be your employer wanting you to pass a drug test, and we'll talk about what that means. And then the last one's information. Your phone, computer, text messages, social media, Snapchats, tweet. All of that now obviously is changing over time, but the Fourth Amendment applies to all of those as well. And these 4 areas all come straight out of the amendment. Your person, that means you. The cop can't just come search you on the street for no reason. Your home. Your papers, which would be documents, bank records, phone records, text messages, and effects is your stuff. Your backpack, your purse, your car. So typically cops are going to need a warrant to search you, and that's a written document obtained by police after stating under oath that they have probable cause to suspect someone of committing a crime. So if, let's say the cops get a report that I'm dealing drugs out of my house, neighbors around me are complaining about it. So the cops might come stake out my house. They might sit in a van down the street and watch my house and keep track of how many people are coming in and out of my house during the night. They might go through my garbage and find evidence that I'm dealing drugs. They're going to take all of that. They might even actually send somebody in, an undercover cop, into the house to buy drugs. They're going to take all of that, compile it, and go to a judge and say, look, here's all of the reasons why we believe he's selling drugs. Here's our probable cause. The judge signs off on it. They then have the right to come into my house and search it. There are times when police can search your house without a warrant, and actually probably more searches are done through these 7 methods than actually using a warrant. So the first type is if you commit a crime right in front of the police, right? If they see you commit a crime, they're not going to say, hang out, I'm going to go get a warrant, I'll be right back. You won't be there. And warrants take a little bit of time to get. So if you commit a crime, they can come search you. Number 2, during traffic stops. If it's for a minor amount of drugs during a traffic stop, again, they're not going to need a warrant. If I'm a cop and I pull you over and I come up to your window and I can smell drugs, I can see drugs, I have the right to search your car. Drug testing. So again, the police might want your blood for a blood alcohol level, or your job. Your job, I may ask you to take a drug test. Neither one of them needs a warrant. Remember, your job is not the government, so your job can drug test you at any time because you don't have the right to work there. If you don't want to take the drug test, don't work there. Plain sight. If the cops walk down the streets, or maybe they're coming to your house for one reason, but then they look in the window and they see illegal stuff, drugs, guns. Not that guns are always necessarily illegal on their own, but if they for some reason think those guns are illegal, they would have the right to come into your house to check that out. If there's no time to get a warrant, that's called an exigent circumstance or an emergency circumstance. If I'm a cop and I get a report of a domestic dispute, a fight between a husband and wife at a house, and I show up at the house and I can hear them fighting in the house, but nobody will answer the door and it's locked. I don't have to leave. I shouldn't have to leave to go to a warrant and come back. Obviously, that's a bad situation. I could maybe try to bust on that door to get in. 6, found during pursuit. Again, if cops are chasing you for whatever reason, and then they find you, they can search you. Or if you're throwing stuff out the windows as you're running from the cops, they're gonna have the right to search all of that. That's found during pursuit. And number 7, probably where a lot of their searches come from, are consent. Cops are very good at asking you, hey, do you mind if I search your purse or search your backpack or search your car? And a lot of times people feel like they don't have the right to say no, which isn't always the case, but they get your consent to search. Exclusionary rule. This comes out of the court case Mapp v. Ohio. And really, this is the idea that the cops cannot use evidence they find illegally. Really, the purpose behind this rule, which came out of this court case, is to prevent the cops from intentionally violating the rules. If the cops find evidence illegally, it's not supposed to be used against you in court. So let's say there's a murder down the street, somebody was stabbed. Well, on the other side of town, I get pulled over for speeding. But for some reason, the cop decides to search my car, and he finds the bloody knife under my seat. If he didn't have the right to search me, then that knife, even though that knife proves I stabbed that guy over here, they would not have the right to use that knife against me in court. Now, they're going to take the knife and they're going to arrest me and they're going to take me to court, but my lawyer then is going to argue, hey, wait, that cop didn't have the right to search the vehicle. He was put over for speeding. That's a speeding ticket. That's not a search. And the judge might say, you're right, that he had no right to search, so that knife cannot be used against me in my trial. Now, they could try to find other evidence, but that specific piece of evidence could not be used. So that's the important case, exclusionary rule. The evidence should be excluded. This really is the idea that, but if the police act in good faith, like if they could argue, like, we thought we were doing the right thing. Let's say the cops get a warrant to search my house, but somebody screwed up and they typed the wrong address on the warrant and they hit my neighbor's house, but they still find illegal stuff. The judge might still let them charge that person with that illegal stuff because the cops acted in good faith. Also, the idea that if the prosecution could prove that they would have found the evidence anyway, through legal methods, the judge may allow it. And this chart just goes through the process of, is the evidence admissible in court? Again, just because the cops find it doesn't mean the court is going to allow it. That's where your lawyer comes in. Your lawyer is going to argue for one reason or another that it should not be allowed. The exclusionary rule, if they should not have searched you, or maybe even if the cops were following the proper procedures, maybe they didn't follow it all, follow every specific rule. If the cops are searching my home for illegal guns, they probably don't have the right to go search through my medicine cabinet in my bathroom and look in all my pill bottles because, a gun's not going to fit in there. So, but let's say they do and they find some drugs. Well, in theory, those drugs should not be used against me because they were looking for weapons, not drugs. And the drugs were found where weapons could not be. Now, if they find the drugs sitting out on a counter, then they could use it against me because that's where guns could be. California versus Acevedo is a court case about what in your car. So initially, cops can search the lunge area, anywhere you have access to. So if they pull you over for speeding, anywhere you have access to, they typically have the right to look, especially if they have probable cause. But this really is dealing with containers. So the glove box, the center console, your backpack, your purse in the car. Again, they have to have probable cause to search those things. They can't just search them for no reason. Stop and frisk. So this is the idea that if the cop thinks you're being suspicious, if they see you, maybe you're on the street and you're walking back and forth in front of a jewelry store or a bank like 5, 6, 7, 8 times, they see you just kind of walking back and forth, that looks a little suspicious. And so the cops have the right to stop and frisk you. It's two different things. Stop to ask you some questions, and to frisk, which means pat you down for safety. Really, it's for the officer's safety. But again, they have the right to do this if it's based off reasonable suspicion. So again, if they see you doing something that looks suspicious, you're wandering back and forth in front of a store, are you trying to rob the place? What are you doing? They may have the right to stop and frisk you, and that's based on the Terry v. Ohio court case. Schools are a whole other animal. Remember, The Fourth Amendment protects you from the government, and the government does run schools, but schools are not police, so there is a difference. And this comes out of the court case New Jersey versus TLO. TLOs are the girl's initials because she was a minor. Her and her friend were in a bathroom. Her friend was smoking. A teacher caught them, took them down to the principal's office. The principal searched the girl who was caught smoking, dealt with her. And then the principal went to deal with the friend, TLO, and he said, I want to search your purse. She said, no, I wasn't smoking. You can't search it. And he said, oh, I'm going to search it anyway. Opens her purse and sees cigarettes, moves the cigarettes, finds rolling paper, moves the rolling paper, finds drugs, marijuana, moves marijuana, and finds a list of names and dollar amounts. Basically, she was dealing drugs in school. He calls the cops and she's arrested. Well, she argued that the cops did not have the right to search her because she wasn't doing anything illegal. They didn't have a warrant and whatnot, and the court ruled against her. The court ruled that school officials do not need a warrant to search students. Typically, it either has to be random, it has to be based on violating a school rule, but they do not need a warrant to do it. All that is needed are reasonable grounds to believe a search will uncover that a student has broken school rules. So her and her friend were in the bathroom. One was caught smoking. It's reasonable to believe that the other one was smoking. That's why he could search her purse. Think of our backpack searches at school. Typically they're random. When they happen, or they're everybody. Everybody comes in, they search everybody. So they can search everybody. They can do random searches. They could come up and search you if they have a reason to believe you've broken a school rule, but it can't just be out of nowhere. They can't just come to you for no reason and search you. And drug testing for athletes was upheld as constitutional by the Supreme Court in 1995. So, if you want to be part, some schools drug test athletes, and then it's even been expanded to any other extracurricular activity, whether that's musical, the band, newspaper, yearbook. If schools want to do it, they can. Now, most schools don't do it just because it costs money to do, and schools are always trying to cut costs, but some schools do that. All right, so typically wiretapping your phone, this doesn't happen a lot, I don't think. I think it's typically if they're suspecting somebody of being a terrorist or probably, for drugs. Really, the Patriot Act, which was passed after 9/11, gave the federal government a lot more power to tap people's phones, but the thing to remember is they typically always have to have a warrant. They're going to have to go to a judge and say, this is why we want to tap their phone. Here's all of our probable cause. And the judge will sign off on it, and then they'll do it. Now, you won't know they did it, right? They're not going to come knock on your door and say, hey, here's our warrant. We're tapping your phone, because you'll never use your phone. They're going to get the warrant, tap your phone, gather the evidence, charge you in court, and then have to show the warrant there. And in the end, how does the judge look at it? Well, who made the search? Was it the government or a private person? Were your rights violated? Was there probable cause? Did they have a warrant? And does the exclusionary rule apply? And if not, they're going to allow the evidence to exist. All right, so that's where we're going to wrap up today. That's the Fourth Amendment. In our next video, we're going to talk about your rights during a trial. And if you are convicted, what rights you have to make sure the government does not treat you with cruel and unusual punishment. And so we'll focus on all of those in the next video. So have a great day.